I mean, it can be. You guys obviously saw that I just turned it on, no ill effect. If anything is ever, I'm going to state a lot of the obvious. If anything is ever broken in the kiln, and you guys want to make sure that you're as safe as possible, then you need to make sure you turn that off. There might be times when the kiln breaks and isn't working at all. In other words, this thing starts beeping at you, alarms go off. It's okay. Well, let me back up a little bit. There's no way that these kilns are going to start a fire. And that's what most people are worried about, right? Is I don't want to start a fire. It's not going to happen. The only way it might happen is if you leave some tacos on the top of it and have it on. And they would smolder a little bit, but actually starting a fire, they probably wouldn't even start a fire. These kilns are really well insulated, and they're well insulated for a reason, right? At the same time, they do get hot, like hot to touch. And so when this kiln's at 2,000 degrees, it's not going to sizzle like bacon. But if you touched it, you would take your hand away rather quickly. But I mean, even if you touched it with a tinder place, not your hand, it's not going to burn you in a way that would be you'd have to go to the hospital. So that is probably the biggest thing first. It's just it's a big oven. You're not going to. Well, I guess you could start a fire in the oven if you left, if there was grease in there, but there's no grease involved. Probably the biggest safety thing with these when they're hot is not to have any water around them, right? Because water in 2,000 degrees makes steam really fast, and so but why would you would never have water back here anyway. So, questions so far? Okay. So you guys have these are the fancy new, and they're not that new anymore, but these Bartlett controllers
that's my first question. We haven't actually been in our ceramics area. Does the middle schooler have these, or do we have different ones?
You guys have different kilns, yeah.
Okay.
And what I should do with you guys, it's going to be similar. There's going to be some similarities, but more not similar that I need to come over and just push the buttons for you and show you, actually let you drive and push the buttons so
Okay, thank you.
you guys can see how to manipulate them.
Thank you.
So anyway, right now it's 70 degrees in here, right? That's the ambient temperature. And if you want, maybe get a stool and sit right here so you can aim at this, because that's going to be really.
Yeah, I'll share with everybody.
Don't do it.
Don't do it?
Don't.
Okay, I'll exclude you.
There's going to be several times where videoing is not only encouraged, and if you want a video too, it will not hurt my
I'll
feelings.
share it with everybody. But you can't do it.
If you'll share, I'm good.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, sir.
Steve, is there a phone number? Because I remember when I was at McNeil, there was a phone number that came with it. And when we had a question, we thought it was gonna blow up because we just didn't know.
Yeah.
And we called and it was very calming because it's 24-hour number. Is there one that comes with this
Oh, that's really
brand?
interesting. So,
It's Steve Hilton.
yeah.
Steve-
940-613-70.
Yeah, there's a 1800 number on here.
Yeah.
There is a phone number on
Mhm.
there?
Yeah.
Because that was calming.
That's one place to call, but also part of the reason why I helped buy these kilns through the place that I bought them is that they're very kiln friendly and helpful for teachers. Matter of fact, before I forget, let me say this out loud because I think it's coming up relatively quickly. Oh my gosh, I'm glad I remembered this. Brocker's Clay, Brackers, is where I bought these. It's out of Lawrence, Kansas. They have a grant that every one of you guys should apply for. It's a grant where they give money to schools. So yeah, you got that on. So we got this, and I can, if you guys remind me, I can share information with you. But David, Cindy Brocker's husband, the kiln technician up there, is just a really great, nice guy. And with these kilns, buying them from Brocker's, it comes with, hey, this is what's going on. So we have that with us. An awful lot of places where we could have bought them that didn't have that luxury. So not only do you have cone art, but you have Dave, and Dave is he's really amazing. So great questions, thanks. Anybody have any other questions?
Not yet.
What's
And
that?
then-
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
And then if we can, at the high schools, post that number, cause long when we're gone, when people come
Right.
in, that they could at least have that number to call someone, cause
It's
a
on
lot
the
of
side.
teachers, yeah, cause a lot of teachers go through this.
Yeah.
I would think you come into a new school.
Probably what I would do is at one point in time, make something that you can just put on that wall, you know, something that's laminated. I know teachers love to laminate stuff, right? But not you guys, elementary teachers, right? Anyway, so something on the wall with maybe even some of the instruction that I'm about to give if somebody wants to go to that length. Okay, so most of what you guys do is you guys are going to load a bisque, a glaze. You might melt glass. You might you know what? Let's do this. Go get a stool. You guys, because this is going to be at least 30 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. So go get a stool. Yeah.
I want to get you some knee pads. Just looking at you.
Yeah.
You on a little stool?
No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I mean, if there is a tiny one, I would, but this is,
We got you.
I spend quite a bit of time
Crawling around.
just like this.
Are these still adjustable?
They are, they look amazing. Okay, so for the most part, you guys are mostly going to use 1 and 2, bisque and glaze. You're not necessarily going to use glass unless you slump glass for your work, or slumping glass with kids would be fun if you wanted to do that.
I'd love to do that. I like
Yeah.
glass.
And so if you go there, there's an awful lot of instruction just in here, just slumping glass. It's going to give you a menu that allows you just to do it. But again, for the most part, you're gonna, let's say you have a bisqueware to load. Let's first assume that the bisqueware is pretty dry. You don't necessarily want the kiln to do all the drying, right? Mm-hmm. Because the more the kiln does the drying, the sooner you have to replace those elements and the relays that are in here that make the kiln click on and off. And so best case scenario is you have this space to have boards where you can dry the work. However, we all know that sometimes things are late and sometimes we do need to dry things. And so I'll show you a way to do that. But it's best not to dry in the kiln unless you absolutely have to. It's just easier on the kiln. What I do a lot of times, before I forget this, what I do is I'll have a box fan and I'll put a couple of dowels over this and I'll put a box fan right on the top, turn it on and leave it on for 24 or 48 hours if there's things that are suspect. And that'll a lot of times draw off at least the physical water off of the work. Not necessarily the chemical water, the water that's actually bonded to the clay. So let's say we wanted to do a bisque. Program loaded, ceramic bisque, cone 04, medium slow. That's what's loaded. So what we're gonna do, if we wanted to change that bisque, ceramic bisque, cone 04, medium slow, we would go to edit. And let's say that we did have a few pieces that maybe it needed a bit of a preheat. In other words, a warm up. So if we look at here, the preheat time now is at 0. So we're gonna say, let's say we want to preheat for 3 hours. Don't make the mistake, whoops. Sorry. Don't make the mistake of pushing through. Why is my fat finger pushing that? There. I'm thinking that's 3 hours because that's 3 minutes, right? Because if you push 3 minutes and you turn it on in 3 minutes, that thing's going to start and it's going to make your things really hot faster than you want them to, and you could have a problem. I guess I should stop here for just a second. How many of you guys have made clay things before? Okay, we all have. How many of you have had a teacher or a professor say, must have been an air bubble, it blew up?
Yeah.
I've had it happen as a teacher.
Okay. So if that's happened in the past, most likely there wasn't an air bubble. 99.9% of the time that was a fib. Most likely what happened is the teacher started to fire the work too soon. It was not dry enough. Mm-hmm. Quite often what happens whenever work blows up like that, if you look in the kiln, it's in thousands of little shards. It's really easy to tell a sixth grader that it blew up because it looks like it blew up, but it didn't blow up. What happened is as that clay, if part of the piece is wet and part of the piece is dry, it can't shrink evenly, and so it actually pops off like popcorn. If you ever are in here when it's happening and you listen closely, you'll hear it tick, 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 and it sounds like popcorn. That's what's happening. That's what's happened to you in the past. And so if you want to avoid having to tell a sixth grader or a sophomore, just go slow with the work. Don't get in a hurry. Of course, unfortunately, you can't be standing there all the time whenever the kid is making the work. So, what you think is this thick could be that thick. And if that's the case, all bets are off, right? Because if there's a real difference in thickness, you just don't know. You can even teach this in a way. No, you can teach this to your kids. You can take a piece of clay and make a bubble and say, I'm going to fire this just to show you that air will be fine. However, well, maybe you don't want to teach them that. However, know that this is something that we don't want to do, because I know there's a bubble in this and I'm going to dry it and I'm going to heat the kiln accordingly. But if I don't know there's air in there, I'm going to fire the kiln just like I'm assuming it's not. So you can fire work this thick if you fire it slow enough. Mm-hmm. You can fire air in that piece that's that thick if you fire it slow enough. So, all right, so we're going to preheat. We're going to add some zeros. Now it's at 3 hours. And we're going to save that. And for the most part, you guys are going to want to fire to 05 or 04. Probably most of the bottles of glaze that you guys buy are going to say fire to cone 05, sometimes 05, 06. So we can change this to, let's see, to 05. And what that's going to do is that's going to bisque the clay to the point where it is ready for the glaze that you're going to apply. Let's say that you accidentally fired this to cone. Do you guys all know what cones are? What that means? Okay, some of you don't. I'm looking at some eyes.
Why we still have the peaky holes if we're not using actual cones.
Right. By the way, I do need to give you guys some cones that you can use as witness cones, at least to get so you know that the kiln is calibrated to the point where it's supposed to be, and it should be. But what that means is we'll put some cones in here and fire the first time or two, so that you know that it's actually reaching the temperature that it's reaching. And I have some that I can give everyone. Back to the reason why we want to make sure that we fire to the proper temperature. So cone 10 is typically what most people around the world fire stoneware to, and that means it's fired at 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. You're not going to, these kilns will fire that hot, but you're not going to do that because it's a waste of energy. The last 30% getting there, or the last, 300 degrees is 30% of the energy that you use. So it's ridiculous. We don't fire to cone 10 in my studio at school at MSU. So there's cone 10, and it goes all the way down to cone 1, and then it goes O1, O2, O3, O4, O5, okay? So if we're firing to O5, the reason why that bottle of glaze says to fire to O5 is because that glaze is going to suck into, the moisture is going to suck into that wear at cone O5. If it's fired, let's say you accidentally fire it to cone 5, it's going to be much more vitrified, and so the clay is not going to accept moisture like it would at O5, at cone 5. And so you could put 10 layers on there, and it's not going to dry, and it's not going to be sucked. The moisture is not going to be sucked into the wear, so it won't accept glaze. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's why we fire to the temperature that bottle says. So if all the work is dry and it's all this thick, let's say that they made a whole bunch of little pinch pots, or they made a bunch of coil pots, you know absolutely that it's all the same thickness. You know that it's ready to go. You don't have to necessarily fire to medium slow. My fat fingers. We could fire to medium. Probably I wouldn't fire it fast. But at the same time, if let's say that you're not quite sure, let's say that you have some pieces that are a little bit bigger. You might have a sculpture that's this big that instead of being that thick, it's this thick. So then what we might do is we might put it on slow. And so now we're a preheat time of 3 hours, cone 05, it's on slow. We're gonna hold it at the peak. The only reason why you ever wanna hold at the peak is if you're using glazes, that are crystalline, that make crystals. There's actually a program in here for that though. So I wouldn't even mess with this if I was gonna do that. Or if the bisqueware, when you glazed it, was getting, or the glazeware was getting pinholes. And this is a whole nother thing. And I would just take a deep breath and not worry about that right now. So if the glaze is, if you're getting a lot of pinholes, typically it means, and we're firing a glaze kiln, it means that it needed to hold a little bit longer so that those pinholes melted out. So, questions? It's a lot, right? All right, so at this point, we're preheat time of 3 hours, cone 05, speed is slow, hold a peak, look at it twice, get a student to make sure they read it twice, check it 4 times, just to make sure that you don't mess up. And I don't know, just go slow, really. We're gonna go back, and at this point, we're ready to start. And let's say that in this room, you guys should be golden, right? This thing's gonna drop down, it's gonna suck the stuff out of here, that door's gonna be closed, kids aren't gonna be in here. You could fire this any time, right? If I were you, I would try my best to fire it while you're here. Do I fire my kilns? Push the button and go home? I do. I've never had one of these not work. It doesn't mean that they sometimes don't work. So as much as you can, fire it while you're here, because you can. You can start this thing. If we started it now, well, I don't know, I'll look at the time in a second. Sometimes it's just not practical. And so if you do, don't tell them that Steve told you so. The worst of the stories that I know, a few years ago, it was a kiln sitter. It wasn't one of these. A few years ago, a person at the Catholic at Notre Dame called me and said, "Steve, I was here the whole time." Well, after hearing that, I knew something was up. And then she told me my kiln melted down. And so basically, cone 05 clay melted into a puddle in the bottom of the kiln. So it got to cone, can I say, oh shit? It got really, really hot. And she couldn't have been there because it would have been glowing. These things, there's more safety in this than there was in those old kiln sitter kilns. So we're ready to start. Start now. and it's on, it's going, shut the door and it'll fire, okay?
And then shut the little, if you know that it's dry.
Are they
shut
open?
the
Oh,
things.
yeah. When you're firing, you wanna make sure they're all shut. If you're firing a bisque and you want some moisture to escape, I mean, there are two ways to think about this. Some people say, nope, we want the moisture in there and we want it to equalize. And there are some people that say, no, you want to open those things up. I don't have any Samsonite either way. I don't have any luggage either way. I don't know what the right answer is. If I'm doing what I really want to do, I'm making sure the work's dry before I shut the door. Somebody had a question.
No, the clicking okay?
The clicking is okay. So what that clicking is there are relays in here, and those relays are turning the elements on and off. So in this particular kiln, there's 4 sets of elements. There's one on the floor and 3 sets of elements. And there are thermocouples in here, these little things that are sticking out of the kiln. That's what's telling the computer what the temperature is. And there are 3 thermocouples, and so what that means is they're all determining when those elements should go on and off. So, I mean, this might be way more information that you need, or than you need. Other questions?
Does the preheat and the slow kind of, you do the same thing? So you're doing the preheat and the slow to make sure that everything's nice and dry.
So the preheat is going to keep it at less than 210 degrees. That's a great question, okay? Hotter than 210, it's going to boil, steam's going to be given off. If there's any moisture, it's going to want to do this. So the preheat is just to get that physical water to go away. The slow is to make it go slow enough that the chemical water that's combined with the clay is released slow enough. If you have bigger or thicker pieces.
So do you always recommend 3 hours and on slow?
No.
No.
It depends on what I'm firing.
Okay.
And sorry to be glib, it depends on what I'm firing. If my students are getting ready to start this, it's a 24-inch classic vessel that they're putting a contemporary surface on. These pieces are all going to be this big. I'll be able to put, in my big oval, I'll be able to put 6 or 7 in there. Those, even though they're going to be put in the kiln dry, I'll probably preheat those because they're so big, for 7, 8 hours. And I might even do this. Let's stop. Actually, yeah, I would do this. I'm going to show you something else that most of you probably won't ever even want to think about doing. But I want to show you what it's capable of doing. So let's say that I want to load those big pieces in my kiln. I'm not going to load a regular bisque. I'm going to go to custom. So user 1, custom user 1. I'm going to basically program my own program. So what I would do if I was going to load those things is this. This is section 1 or segment 1. Right now it's going to go up at a rate of 100 degrees an hour, and it's going to go up to a temperature of 200 degrees. So that's completely safe, right? And I probably with big pieces wouldn't go up any faster than 100 degrees an hour. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put on hold. I'm going to put 8 hours. Save. And then I'm going to add a segment. Let's see, I remember how to add a segment. No. Yeah, there we go. Add a segment. Okay, the second segment, once it's there for 200 degrees for 8 hours, I can start to get hotter. I might even go, it's okay to go 150 degrees an hour. And this is something that one of my residents taught me, that sometimes if you really want to force the chemical water out, you can do something like this. So I'm going to put it up to 500 degrees. And I'm going to hold that at 500 degrees for 2 hours. So this is
You did 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you. This is like, I was just seeing if you guys were paying attention. This is like a safety switch, right? It's really going to keep us those things from blowing up. And so then I want to add another segment. And then the next one, oh, I didn't want to do that. Hold on. Delete. My finger's too fat. All right. All right. I want to add a segment there. Well, all right. Not sure why it's not letting me add a segment. Okay, we can just do this. So 150.
That was an hour and 50 minutes.
Say that again?
Did you just put in an hour and 50 minutes somewhere?
It's going up at 150 degrees an hour, and so now we're at 2. Okay, and this one we're at 150. At this point, once it's at 500 degrees, I might. This is really. My fat finger isn't so fat with mine. So now we're 100 degrees an hour for 200 up to 200 degrees. We're going to hold it at 8 hours. I would delete that one. I'm not going to do it right now. Next is 150 an hour, 500 degrees for 2 hours. At that point, we can make it go 200 degrees an hour, and we can go to, wow, I swear I'm hitting that.
I think you're going right below it.
What's that?
So I think you're going right below it. So go a little up. Press it. I think it's hitting the copy.
Did you just say coffee?
Copy.
Sorry.
I might go hit the coffee.
Well, you have skinny fingers.
I do have skinny fingers.
I have really skinny fingers. Do we need them? Yeah, I was about to say.
Let me just set this, and then I'll call you back in. See if you can hit that 4. Hell yeah, I think you did it. So, add segment.
I wonder if we should use a stylus for this.
Maybe.
I wonder if it would work.
My ring is a 3.5. I have the weirdest, smallest
Oh, wow.
fingers. I mean, I could get in.
Hit 1,000. I can't hit 1,000.
It's lit.
Did you just say it's lit?
Yeah, fam.
All right, hit 1 hour and 50 minutes. I can't. That's just weird. My fingers aren't that fat.
I know. I don't know if it's calibrated correctly.
Okay. Hit that 2. Delete that segment. All right. Yay. So now we're set to go up slow to cone 05. And so if I was going to fire great big things, this is what I would do. I would customize it and have Sean push the button. Questions?
Can you fire something too slow? You said not to fire things too fast.
Could you fire, okay, so could you put it on low or slow instead of medium and be okay?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, you can't, the only thing firing too slow does, it uses more energy, over a period of time, right? So,
Not necessarily a concern.
yeah. Yeah, it's, actually, let me
Bless
back
you.
up and say, you use more energy, you use the equipment a little harder, right? Because the more clicks, these things only have so many clicks. That relay is only gonna go
Right.
click clack so many times. And they're easy enough to replace. You can actually get them here in town. They're $40, but it's a pain to have to do it. And inevitably, what happens is it goes bad when you're a week away from the semester being out, right? So that happens to me just about every semester. I'll have a kiln go out the last month, that last 3 weeks of class. So, okay, but good question. Other questions? Yeah.
Do you need to set like a hold time, like for once it reaches its cone that you're firing to? Is this one that you need to set like 10 minutes to hold to that?
If you wanted to hold here, you would add another segment, or you could go down here at 8:55 and you could tell it to hold for 30 minutes. But for the most part, unless you're having problems with pinholing or some other glaze issue, I wouldn't mess with that. So, other questions?
What kind of glazes do you suggest? Cause we're right now in process of ordering things.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a kind of glaze that you would suggest?
So, yeah, is there internet here? And can I get my computer, or does somebody have a computer we can go online here at one point in time? Okay, and could we put it up on a screen? Is there other
You can
projectors?
put it up on a big old screen.
Okay.
We're real
Yeah.
proud of them.
Okay, good. Because we
If
can,
they work.
If they
yeah,
work.
we can do that.
Sean's will work.
And I can go through some places and some things to think through and to think about. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
I had a student last year. I'm gonna bring it back when we come back after lunch and everything. It's at home. I've been meaning to bring it up here. But he made a dragon, and it was the end of the year, so we were rushing and things. And he used wire. I'm not familiar I haven't used a lot of wire with sculptures and things. So can we discuss that when we get our hands dirty?
We can, just real quick, if the wire is made out of the same thing that these elements are made out of, it actually, the clay will shrink around it, and it could cause some cracking because it's shrinking, but it'll fire just fine. If it's made out of wire that you bought at the hardware store, it's gonna oxidize, and sometimes to the point where it is just so brittle that it just breaks. It just depends on the wire.
Well,
If that's what you're at.
this held up well. So I'm just not familiar with what kind of wire to use. And
Oh, so you fired it, and
yeah,
it
we
held.
fired it. Yeah,
Oh,
the only
then-
issue was the wings weren't dry completely, so they popped
Right.
off. Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, if you guys want, I have wire that I can give you because I have a bunch of it. That's this type of wire. So,
Thank you.
other
So
questions?
we should keep this, we should hide that.
Those are elements when these elements
Oh,
go
when
back.
they go out, that's
Yeah.
right, okay.
So, the last thing I wanted was for you guys to be 4 years, 5 years down the road, and not have a budget to get new elements. So there should be elements and relays and thermocouples in these boxes, so that there's no budget crisis in 5 years or whenever that happens.
Are they at both schools or just this school?
They're at both schools.
Well, I don't know.
There should be, if I remember right, I bought 2 sets of elements. And the reason why we bought the same kiln is so the parts are all interchangeable. The kiln shells are all interchangeable. So,
Is your ceramics room being used as a classroom now?
Yeah, and we've got teachers that don't even have a classroom. Like, I don't have my room during conference because there's a geography teacher in there. They still haven't finished building the theater, which supposedly has 3 classrooms in it. We don't have that yet.
Do we have the pegs? Is that here?
oh, they should be in one of
They
these
should be in
boxes.
there. Okay.
In that one.
Okay.
I have kiln furniture, some kiln furniture. I'm hoping that you guys brought Cause there was some really nice, kiln furniture in some of the schools where I
I
So-
brought it off from Ryder because I was told to, and then I was told not to. And then Vicky can attest, I just went, whatever. And I think it's here.
okay,
But my drive.
There's a bunch of furniture at Old Top, but it's in a dark room with a bunch of spiders, and I'll let the spiders have it. I figured they need some furniture too.
Bar-wise.
So- I would get somebody who isn't as afraid of spiders as you are. Cause this stuff is stupid expensive. And once it breaks, again, you might be right in a budget crisis that there isn't any. And yeah, I would not let that stuff is like gold. Because right now, you have
Is that enough for both kilns?
enough for both kilns, but you're, because of you don't have that many,
Yeah.
you're probably gonna have to post,
Yeah.
you need more, I would have more furniture. If there's more furniture in the district, don't let it go away, cause it's just too expensive. Yeah? What were you-
No, I was just saying, bar-wise, I have a ton. Bar-wise used to have a huge ceramic studio.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a whole, I know a story behind that
Oh.
would make all of you just cringe.
Mhm.
So, okay, glazing, and this won't take nearly as long, because most of the time when you glaze fire, you're just gonna push the button to tell it to glaze fire. So probably what I would do is I would, depending on what the bottle says, it's gonna say cone fire to 04 to 06. If your kids are making a lot of ware that is gonna be, you're gonna eat and drink off of, then I would fire it a little warmer. So I would fire it to cone 04 instead of 06. Because the glaze is gonna be able to fire that to that temperature. That's gonna vitrify it more. It's gonna cause less, or it could cause less glaze issues, i.e. Crazing, so that, the glaze is gonna do better. So for the most part, there's no reason to fire a glaze kiln any fast or slower than fast. The wear is already done. The only time that I would be wary about firing it fast is if I have something that's being reglazed. So let's say you had a kid who wanted to put more glaze on something. When you put that object back in the kiln, if you fire that too fast, that could be an inconvenience. But other than that, if everything's bisque, put it on fast, push the button, it'll go, and that is really all I would think about at this, or for this. Again, if your glaze has some problems that you think you might be able to fix, you could tell it to hold at the peak. This kiln you can turn the cooling off, so it has this doesn't have the vent attached. So yeah, you won't mess with that.
How long are we looking at for a bisque fire and for a glazed fire? Are we gonna have to have it on overnight? And is that safe?
So let's go back to, let's see, load, bisque, okay. Look at the graph. So right now, this thing is looking like it's gonna fire a glaze kiln from 0 to 1940 degrees if it's cone 04 in less than 4 hours.
But that's just a glaze.
That's a glaze kiln, yeah. So
like if we did a glazed fire in the morning, it would be finished before we went home for
Yeah.
the day. We
Yeah.
wouldn't have to worry about the oven being left on
Right.
overnight.
And then with these particular kilns, you're probably looking at, if you did that today, like we started it right now, it's finished before, by 2 o'clock certainly. It's gonna be every bit of tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon, before you can even think about opening. I might as well say this out loud. The cooler you let the kiln get, the less damage you do to the refractory. So you don't want to open this kiln, you don't want to get in a hurry when it's cooling. So I typically tell my students, don't even think about opening it until it's less than 200 degrees. What I prefer it to be is 150 or less. And if we don't have to get the stuff out of it, just let it cool, leave it alone. So yeah, opening a kiln hot can damage the wear. It can cause crazing and some glaze issues with the wear. But I don't know, maybe more importantly in my mind is you don't want to ruin your
Face.
Yeah, let's go back to the bisque. Let's go back to that custom one that I did, just because. Edit and graph. So right now, this is, if we fired that schedule, 8 hours of warm up, 16 hours to there, and let's see, that's another, you're probably looking at 20 hours. Would I fire this kiln like that and not be here? I would, but I didn't say that out loud. I mean, I do all the time. It's safe. I do it all the time.
So I can imagine they'd be real upset if we, I don't know, blew up the school.
Right, you're not gonna blow up the school. I mean, that I can tell you unequivocally, you're not gonna blow up the school. The only thing that could happen is if the kiln were to malfunction, which I've been using cone art kilns for 20 years. If I had to buy a kiln, I'd buy a cone art before I would buy anything else, because that's what I bought for you guys, or what I asked them to buy you. They're extremely reliable. Even the other brands, Scott, same. I would feel the same way. The manufacturer, if you look at that, it's going to tell you, always be here. Guarantee it's going to tell you something, but what they're doing is they're covering their bottom.
Right.
So, yeah, and I'm saying this on a video, right? I would fire. I do all the time. It's safe, and you're not going to burn the school down.
Would there be any reason why we would need to come check on it at any point in the evening?
Only if you, no, I mean, I don't, no.
Like once it's on and once it's running and it's cooking, then it's
going.
self-sufficient?
It is,
Like
it
we
is.
don't have to.
Yeah, the only thing that could happen some years in the future is if a thermocouple goes bad, what it's gonna do is it's gonna just shut itself off. And so you'll come in the morning and it's gonna be going beep, 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 and it's gonna have an error code here, and you're gonna call 940-613-7044, and I'm gonna answer the phone and tell you what's going on. So yeah, the only thing that'll happen is it'll say, I'm not doing this anymore. If something breaks, it'll just quit.
But in that case, if it's not especially if it's not a glaze, there wouldn't necessarily be any damage to the project,
No.
though, right?
No, even when it shuts off, if you're firing it correctly and safely, all you're gonna do is fix the thermocouple, turn it back on, and you're good. Yeah.
How much do the kilns cost in case we?
This kiln, if I remember right,
In case we would.
retails. I want to say this one retails for about $6,800, I think is what it was. But I think Cindy, the Brockers have been friends of mine for years. I think she gives schools. I mean, not that, but I think she gave you guys a 20% discount.
So on the money thing, the
No, in case I break one.
grant, I couldn't think of the word.
Yeah.
That's the word I'll use.
They would give us money like to buy clay.
$7,000.
Yeah, good question. So the Brocker, that foundation, her foundation, she, I don't know, last year before, Alyssa got $1,500 worth of underglaze. So you guys should all apply, and they might, the more people apply, the more money they might consider putting into this fund. They're extremely gracious people. They're just amazing. and very helpful and thoughtful about education. So, did that answer your question about safety?
What do we do with these vents?
So, these guys should pull down.
Yeah, there's
I'm
4 cords in
guessing.
the back.
So, there's a list to this, and they should be relatively easy. These lids have a spring on them, and so they, anybody or everybody should be able to open this for the most part, because it's spring loaded, and then these things drop down.
Yep.
And that's how close you want the vent?
As close as it'll get. Yeah.
Oops.
We were like poisoning ourselves at all the other schools, oh my gosh.
So,
Cool.
Sean, come over here, or somebody else, come over here and help me. Let's pull this vent into the center. This kiln into the center.
Okay.
This little arm
It's
above.
not centered over the vent, so it's centered over the vent.
The,
1, 2.
like that, give us some more.
That's better. Okay.
Oh, yeah, look,
Yeah.
Steve, it swivels.
What?
Apparently this
it swivels, you don't have to move the kiln.
Oh, duh. Okay. Well, anyway, we did.
Real quick, I just noticed the pulleys. I would be the one to always do the vent. Don't let a kid do it because they'll pull it too hard and it'll come loose. We've had that issue at McNeil.
Yeah.
So I would just always be the one to lower the vent. Raise it. Because kids.
There's plenty of space in here, so
Did it get fixed at McNeil?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. It happened my first year there. So yeah, when we had to fix it. Yeah. So just don't let kids mess with it.
Oh, no, they're not allowed in there.
Yeah. And y'all got lots of furniture, like to set.
Yeah, I saw.
So if we get glaze on the furniture, is it done? If it melts on the furniture?
no. But what we need to do, what you guys need to do is you need to kiln wash all of your shelves, and so you can buy kiln wash. It's not very good. Probably what I should do is I should invite somebody from both schools or all schools to come over and we can just make some kiln wash. You guys can use it. Because the stuff that you buy, and there might be some in one of these boxes, it's kind of junk. But yeah, you always want to have, before you fire anything with glaze, you want to get kiln wash on your shelves. If you get glaze on there, they're not trashed. They're trashed, but you just have to knock the glaze off, and then if it actually melts into the kiln shelf, which it does inevitably, you have to grind it off. So,
Okay.
I can show you guys how to do that too, not necessarily here, but I can show you if you guys want to come over. I can show you at MSU. And for that matter, if you want, you can just bring the shelf over and you can use my grinder. So, other questions? Good question.
How much do those vents cost? Well, cause he doesn't have one at his school.
So, I shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm going to. I wouldn't have bought that vent because it's way more expensive than a vent that's just as capable, especially what's on the other side of this wall. Anybody know?
Nothing, I think.
Nothing.
Outside,
Yeah.
Courtyard.
it's outside.
I would have vented the kiln right through there. I would have not had any of this infrastructure. It's just ridiculous.
It looks pretty though.
Yeah. So there's something called an EnviroVent. Matter of fact, I might have one. If you have an outside wall, you'll just need to get somebody to drill a hole through the wall. So it's a 4-inch hole. You know, this thing probably costs $4,000 or $5,000, I bet, with all that infrastructure that's going into wherever, who knows where it's going. Those EnviroVents,
That's a lot of support.
they're probably $600. But I have at least 2 that people have given me. They're not brand new, but we can set you up.
So I think it's vented. I think it's just vented differently. Because it has an exhaust that turns on.
It does,
Yeah, it does exhaust.
but it's not going outside the,
No, it is going outside. It's just that it's not. It didn't
It's
have
not
a
like a
hanging
cover.
bar. Just
oh,
as
you
a-
don't need this.
Yeah.
If you have something that's venting from below, then you're good.
Okay.
Yeah,
that
you're
was
good.
my question.
That, you have an enviro vent.
I just wanna know the prices, because we're working around children, and I think it's very helpful if you know the prices of things and how hard it is to replace things.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
I wanna
this
be
is-
careful around things I can't afford.
$6,500? No, don't touch it.
that, one of those kiln shelves, just the kiln shelf, these hollow core, yeah, those are $120. So if you're gonna have, if a kid's gonna touch a kiln shelf, it's gonna be somebody who is gonna be really careful.
Yeah.
Would I have my children helping me with load and unload kilns? Absolutely. I would, but I would just, really stress, like this stuff is, when you're putting a kiln shelf in here, you wanna be very careful that you don't knock it against the soft brick, because you'll take a chunk out of it really easily. Is the kiln, is it gonna hurt anything if it gets a chunk knocked out of it? Not too bad. It's gonna mostly hurt your heart because it doesn't look new anymore. Which also reminds me, probably during your first fire, maybe second fire, certainly first 5 fires, you're likely to have a crack somewhere, and it's okay. That happens. It happens to every kiln. The one thing that you want to let the Brockers know and Conart know is that the lid cracks. But there very well could develop a crack in the floor, in one of the walls, and that's just part of it.
I had 2 questions. Are we able to replace the coils when that time comes? And why do these look stacked and like they can be like?
So it's done this. They're built this way in case you can't get them through the door.
Oh, okay. That
So you
makes
can
sense.
take them apart.
Okay.
I avoid taking them apart at almost all costs because it's a pain in the neck to put them back together.
That makes sense.
Can you guys replace the elements? Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
absolutely. Is it easy? Not the easiest, but if you can put a plug into a wall, or change that switch out, you can do this. You can put a new element in. It's really not that difficult. When the time comes, I probably won't be here anymore. I'm hopeful, that it's 5-6 years. I mean, not hopeful that I won't be here, but hope it's quite a while before you have to do that. But yeah, it's relatively easy.
Okay.
Probably, well, I'll just say it's relatively easy.
Okay.
There are people that will drive from Dallas to replace them. And if you guys think about it, I can give you their names. So remember that question, and I'll send you guys some names. There's one guy who's great. He's a really nice guy. I mean, I don't ever use him, but I just know of him. Good questions. Anybody else?
When you're loading your stuff, what are you, I fell in the kiln last year, loading stuff all the way at the bottom, top half, and kids had to come lower me down. What are you practically doing?
So that's a great question. Pragmatically.
It hurt.
Yeah.
And
So
my ass was in there.
I'm glad you asked, because I probably not even thought about this. So I have people that are, oh, look at that. You got a bonus,
Yay.
$50 pair of gloves. So I'm glad you asked, because let's talk about this. If I was gonna load this kiln, I would do this, and I'll invite you to come over here in a second, once we're set.
So you're not gonna put, okay, so are you about to build like the base shelf
Yes.
thing?
And then you won't even have to take these out. I'm just gonna load it
And you can do
with the
video, right?
easiest things that came up. So you don't want to put the kiln shelves right on the bottom. This is a bad habit to get into, so don't put in there.
This is where I fell in. I was putting a shelf.
Yeah.
We use
Okay.
a step ladder.
Yeah, I was on the step.
So
It may be more of a physical issue.
I have a little step that's next to my kilns that some of my students use. So it looks like it looks like one of those things that people used to do. So again, these things you want to be really careful when you put them in that you don't bump anything. And
These are shorter than the ones.
It's tall.
Yeah, it's like,
The one at Ryder, I think, was taller too.
Yes.
Was that really nice, or this isn't as tall as the one at Ryder?
all right, everybody come in and take a look at what is in here so far. I mean, if you need to, if you guys have loaded a kiln, then it's not that big a deal. So you always want a 3-post.
You always want one?
3-post.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. And not sure why you ever would, but you certainly never want to put 4, because 4 means that it's just like the stool that goes clunk, 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 right? If there's 3, it can't go clunk, clunk, right? So let me put this other one in.
Never cook directly on the bottom?
Never directly on the bottom, yeah.
Oh, we did that.
But you could be that
Oh, we
close
didn't
to the
have a
bottom.
like that.
Yeah. So, you know what, let me back up and say this. Let's say that you got a kid who made a really, really tall piece, and the only way it's gonna go in there is if you do it right on the bottom. I would. But then, by the time that's fired, bisque fired, it's gonna shrink enough, you can put the kiln shelf back. I would not glaze fire with it directly on the bottom, because if it ever shed glaze onto the element, then you're replacing a $200 element. The elements are expensive. So then this one is gonna go here, and then the reason why I'm showing you this is now I'm ready to put my next shelf on. You wanna absolutely make sure that you stack these directly on top of your last set. Okay? I'm firing a bisque kiln. How can I load this? How do I load this? I want to put as much stuff in here as I can safely, because I have shelves full, right? They can touch the side of the kiln, bisqueware. It can touch, or greenware. It can touch each other. You can stack them. Everybody watch. You have a bunch of bowls. You can stack bowls on top of each other like this. So you use less shelving, which means it goes further. You can actually stick more stuff in there. If I had, here in a minute, I'm going to show you a bunch of bowls that we're making for empty bowls. If I was bisque firing them, I might stack them foot to foot, lip to lip, all the way to the top. Not even put any kiln furniture in here, because you don't really have to. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You can actually, and sometimes I have a resident who just has never seen it before. You can tumble stack. That's what it's called, and hopefully it doesn't tumble. But if you can carefully stack things in here to the point, you don't have to put kiln furniture in a kiln at all for a bisque kiln. I do sometimes, especially when there's delicate things. But if it's a bunch of sculpture, like there might be times where I'll stack to here and then with furniture, and then I'll just tumble stack the whole rest of the kiln.
Because it can touch the sides.
Because it can touch the sides, it can touch each other, and it isn't going to hurt the wear. You know, let's say if you had a really, really, really thin plate, it's possible that it's going to get hot enough, even at bisque, to kind of do a taco. But most of the time, at bisque temperature, it's not. You're not going to have a problem. So, questions? Other questions?
Would a longer warm-up solve that problem?
No.
I'm not experienced enough to know.
No. If it's gonna bend, it's gonna bend because it's, you know, and it's more likely to bend a thin thing, a thin plate, if it's but you would always put it on an actual shelf, so it's not gonna want to bend. You know, if it was in a glazed kiln, right?
Can you double stack that post?
Can you do this? Absolutely. Post on a post, yeah. You just have to be really a little more careful. But once you put the shelf on there, it becomes pretty solid. Every now and then, I'll make sure that I'll put at least one against the wall because that solidifies the stack a little bit. And as long as it doesn't have glaze on it, you can even do that in a glazed fire, right? It's not gonna hurt it because it doesn't have glaze on it. You know, if this had glaze on it, I wouldn't do that. But yeah, that's a good question. You can double stack. If you guys need taller kiln furniture, I don't know what's in this box. I have a ton of it. Taller posts. Yeah, you guys don't. No, there are probably some in the bottom, but there aren't gonna be many. But I do have posts. So.
Just wondering if you have any more.
Yeah, these are nice. These are awesome shelves because they're these hollow core ones. They're not solid. Yeah, they're really good shelves. This is what I use in my kiln.
Are they fragile if you drop it on concrete?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would find a place that they live and a place I would never do that.
Ship over.
Like, just don't do it. You know, let's say you're unloading and you're gonna load it right back up and you think, I'll just put it there. The next thing you know, you bump it and it goes and it's in 6 pieces. So I would have a place probably right there and or maybe even, you know, back in the corner back here where you keep those things. I would probably have one shelf where those are stacked and, you know, in an orderly manner. Yeah.
We just don't have shelves.
You don't have shelves?
No, we're waiting on
So
it
that you would
to.
another
Do
side.
y'all have these? Do y'all have these?
They are coming.
That, but we don't have the
Yeah,
shelves.
we have the other two.
In our classrooms, everywhere in the whole school. We have the beginnings, but not the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well, you want me to call the shelf guy and ask him where they are?
Do you know the shelf?
I do know the shelf.
Yeah.
Oh my
God. He's a
That's how
friend
you
of
they
mine.
didn't have
Do you know the
doors.
blind, do you know the blinds guy?
Don't know the blind guy, but
But
the
at
shelf
least
guy's
they
a
have the
good friend.
doors to their cabinets. They have the doors to their cabinets. We don't have the left side doors to our cabinets.
There are no doors going on this.
That's
Okay.
okay. Are you sure?
That would be horrible.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let them put them
That would
on.
be so pretty right now.
Yeah. Okay, other
Someone's not
questions?
recording, I-
Edit that out.
Okay, got it.
Anything else?
No, I'm excited now. Now